almost want to say I don't know how they do it. I almost want to say that I don't know how Sega and RGG Studio have managed to make this series still feel fresh, despite the fact that mechanically, thematically, visually, they're almost always the same. And yet, every single new Yakuza game that comes out, I love, and I still find them feeling fresh and energetic and new. And I think it all comes down to the writing, which is something that this game, Judgment, really emphasises, because if you're expecting a dramatic revamp, if you're expecting the new name, the appearance of a new intellectual property to revitalise the Yakuza series from the ground up, you're going to be disappointed because it doesn't do that. It is, again, thematically, mechanically, visually, a Yakuza game. I don't know why I said a Yakuza game, but I've committed to it now. I'm not going to keep saying it, but I have committed to it. Anyway, this is Catchem. Just in case you were wondering whether or not this game manages to capture the spirit of the Yakuza games as they have done up until now, oh yes, there is no doubt. By the time you're dealing with enemies known as Catchem or the Panty Professor, then you know that you are deep in Yakuza territory, despite this being seemingly from the outset a new game. And yet, despite so many familiarities, it still feels fresh. And I said I want to question how they do it, but I know how they do it, and it's because of things like this, chasing Catchem down the street. There seems to be no limit to the imagination of Sega and RGG when it comes to weird concepts, strange characters, and bizarre adventures. Yagumi's Bizarre Adventure. Loads of them. Professor Panty. Catchem. When I first started playing Judgment, I was a little bit worried, a little bit disappointed, because even by the series standards, it has a slow burn. And this isn't helped by the fact that Judgment does try and add a few new gameplay features. None of them were necessary, none of them are all that good. Because this game has a more hard-boiled, detective, noir, thriller kind of vibe to it, because its story is more about unveiling a mystery from the side, nominally the side of the law. You're a private detective, but, you know, you are solving crimes and whatnot. The Yakuza are not a group Yagami is as familiar with as a character like Kiryu, for example, to sort of emphasise that theme and the fact that the protagonist is a former lawyer. They add in a few investigative mechanics. They add in some Phoenix Wright style presentation of evidence or searching through evidence photos. The searching, the presentation, that's not so bad, but they have added a lot of lockpicking minigames. And that's what really started to grate on me in the early goings. If you're ever in a position where you're asking, does my video game need more lockpicking minigames? The answer is no. Always no. Unless it's a video game about a locksmith, you, 9 times out of 10, do not need lockpicking minigames. And this game has quite a few. 2 different types. There's one where you're like knocking up pins with a little pick, and there's another one where you're using wires to rotate circles. And neither of them are good, they just get in the way. As is using a key when you have a key, and you've got to go through your key ring to find the right key to put in the lock. Every time you open certain doors. You can unlock a skill that lets you see which key you need to pick, but at that point, it's just an arbitrary, unnecessary step. And then there are tailing missions. These are long and boring, where you've got to follow someone down the street, looking at them and hiding when they turn around. The kind of stuff you see in so many bog-standard so-called AAA action-adventure games. You know, it's 50% of the gameplay makeup in an Assassin's Creed game. Even though there's a narrative reason to include these types of gameplay minigame, they are so unnecessary and they're so ubiquitous across the AAA landscape that it almost feels like a concession on Judgment's part to be a bit more like them. Now, I don't think that necessarily that is what's going on here, but it just looks bad. It just looks like it's trying to be a humdrum, run-of-the-mill video game when it does these things. But it doesn't do them often. They come close together to the point where they start to really drag, but the moments in between those are classic Yakuza-style fun and games, Go and play darts if you want. Go play blackjack if you want. There are loads and loads of side missions. They start coming basically the moment Chapter 2 starts. The first chapter is dull. And I was worried that that was going to set the tone, because even though former Yakuza games can have some really slow intros, can take a while to get going, the burn in Judgment is snail's pace for that first chapter. But the moment Chapter 2 happens, it's like someone flipped on a switch, because then it just starts popping off. You start getting weird side detective cases. You start meeting weird characters. The world starts populating with more friend event characters. The characters that you can build little friendships with after doing just little recurring tasks with them. A lot of the restaurant owners have those. In fact, become friends with the beef bowl bloke. Beef bowl bloke, because I don't know if it happens when you max out any restaurant or certain restaurants, but I maxed out my friendship with the beef bowl bloke and got a skill. It was an expensive skill. You got to spend a lot of points on it, but it lets you eat the food without getting full, which is useful for further friend events, because so many of them run restaurants or serve food, and you will have to stagger your meetings with them if you're full up. There's a lot of that as well, like skills that should be free, or certainly far cheaper and aren't, because they bring the game up to par. Like trying to find the right key for a doorknob. It's just such an unnecessary thing. You shouldn't have to spend skill points to not rifle through keys every time you want to open a door. The drone is fun though. You can pilot a drone and use that to take photos and stuff. Some of the drone missions, as it pertains to the story, can be a bit slow, again, because they're trying to push this whole detective thing. So you're using the drone to, say for example, an early example, fly around a building looking in the windows to look for the right bloke. Yeah, I mean, it's padding. But there are drone races, and they are so much fun. And you can customize the drone and paint it different colours, and the races all take place in Kamurocho in the skies, and you zip around, and it's great. And it's so much better than the little pocket circuit car race things they've had in other Yakuza games. The drone races in this, they're legit. The unnecessary addition of these gameplay elements, except for the drone races, keep those, have led to me, obviously, sharing more complaints than I usually do with a Yakuza game. But they are additions. They are not coming at the expense of anything else. When you're not partaking in a sluggish, uninteresting tailing mission, you are still getting into ludicrous, over-the-top fights. You are still getting drunk at the bar and then staggering about the place, running into walls. You're dealing with pun-laden dialogue. The localization team had a field day with this one. And you can run into walls and jump off the walls, and that's good as well. That's just good, isn't it? Yossha! Yosh! Despite a slow burn and some unnecessarily dreary gameplay additions, Judgment is still, in spirit and in practice, a wonderful little Yakuza-flavoured game. It is fun, it is funny, it certainly makes me laugh more than any other video game with jokes in it. I mean, it makes me laugh more than a lot of so-called comedy out there, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Well written, and serious when it needs to be. It carries that on from Yakuza as well, this idea of having lots of humorous side missions, lots of silly humour, stupid jokes a lot of the time. But the main story narrative, the actual central thread running through it, is serious and intriguing, and is filled with lots of mystery. And wonder about the motivations of certain characters and what will happen next. All of that stuff is still preserved and still wonderfully, deliciously entertaining. And that's really all you need from any game like this, whether it's Yakuza, Fist of the North Star, or Judgment. I hope this isn't the last we see of Yagami, because very much like the Yakuza series, I could stand to have a lot more of this, so long as they keep the writing up, so long as they keep the silliness up, so long as they keep the thoroughly bombastic nature of the combat up, and really, they show no signs of slowing any of that down. So, Judgment, you have been judged, and I've been found wanting. More judgment, that is. It's a joke. It is funny. It is funny. Yeah, it is.